Max Olson, theathletic.com with us. And I absolutely want to make sure we jump into the Lance Leipold story, which was incredible. Max wrote, it was in theathletic.com, I believe it was yesterday. And he joins us on 365 Sports. So, Max, there's this floating of ideas, the automatic qualifiers, the first-round buys, and it appears now that more of the focus is on the revenue of how it's going to be broken down. 58, 31, and 10 or 11 percentage based on the conferences and Power 5 Notre Dame. Do you feel like that percentage is fair?
No, it's obviously not fair. I think that it's been interesting to see the reporting on this for the past couple of weeks. I think that clearly there's an implication here. It's hard not to I understand that with the new deal coming up and with the death of Pac-12, a lot of things are maybe worthy of being reconsidered in terms of format and stuff like that. But I guess my question is what is the or else here? Is the or else that if the Big Ten and the SEC don't get these concessions that they're going to take their football and go off and start their own playoff? I mean, what are we what's the threat here? I guess I'm very curious about that part of it because it's obvious that that Sankey and Petiti would see this as a moment where they could strengthen their position with the playoff in 26 and going forward. Everyone gets that. We can all see what this is, and it just kind of strikes me as kind of gross. I mean, it's not just the automatic bids and the idea of confirming that if these leagues deserve 3 and other leagues deserve 2. That itself is just it's a big reach. But then for the money to be so out of whack, it tells you that this is a pretty strong power play, and that the moment I think a couple months ago or a month ago where the SEC and the Big Ten were talking about kind of being more in partnership and working together. I think we all should have read that as a sign that they are going to start politically operating like this. And I'm not sure there's a lot of people out there, guys, that read the updates on this and are excited about where it's going.
Yeah, Max, that's a great point. Are they really, we've talked to several people that believe that they're not going to let the other conferences go on their way, but nothing that happens just seems like that is at least not in part of their minds. And I wonder if college football understands, the leaders of those conferences and the leaders at the television networks know that this is a regional sport. If you just cut off part of the country, that they're not going to like that overall. I don't know if that's hit them yet.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think it's just kind of an opportune moment here because you've got obviously Jim Phillips is trying to do whatever he can to hold the ACC together in the long term. The Big 12 has signed a grant of rights. Obviously, those members are stuck together here through the end of the decade. But I think it's I think that you're seeing the SEC and the Big Ten viewing this as a chance to really dominate and be the only important conferences in the sport. And I just think there's probably a lot of people, especially in our part of the country, who look at that and say, is that really good for? Is that really a good thing? I mean, you remember when the folks rolled out the 12-team proposal in the first place. The idea was that this was healthier for the sport. And, that 14-team playoff, the shape that it's taking right now, we'll see when this all gets decided here in the next month. But the direction it's heading in, I don't think anyone's looking at that and saying, that's a really healthy thing for the future of the sport.
Max, I know that Brett Yormark and the Big 12 are going to try to do whatever they possibly can, but it's kind of and I don't know how much of a question this is, but at some point, it's one thing when Ohio State's already making, $100 million more than Houston, but they've got the same type of access. If they're all of a sudden, though, making $250 million more, and they've got even better access, at what point, if you're the Big 12, I guess it'll just be interesting to see how you balance access versus playing a game that's clearly already rigged to begin with. And what's the better option for you,
Right. And I think when it comes, look, I know we're in a period right now where it's should we even call it Power 5 anymore or Power 4 or whatever? What's the point? Should we still call them Group of 5 and all that kind of stuff? There's a difference between the perception piece and the money piece. If the money is if we're going to continue to, if we're going to go in these directions where instead of these leagues splitting the money equally, there's a huge difference, then obviously that's going to grow the gap. That's, between the TV deals and the CFP money, then those programs in those two conferences, are going to have a significant advantage every year. And what does that lead to, guys? That leads to schools wanting to bail from the ACC to go be in those two leagues. So, I mean, it just kind of keeps perpetuating the problem.
Max, as far as the backlash of the first round buys that would be guaranteed, that seemed to die quickly.
I mean, yeah, it seems like it. If that's something that was too far and just a little concession to distract people, then maybe that's what they were looking for. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, that for that to be the automatically top two spots, that just doesn't make a ton of sense. And, I think if you go look at, I've kind of tried to model this out a little bit over the past decade. It's imprecise, obviously, if you try to look at what the 14-team playoff would have been over the past decade, because obviously conference membership has changed a ton. And, if you use 24 membership on these past scenarios, you look at it, guys, there's some years when, the SEC would have only had Alabama and Oklahoma, essentially. You know what I mean? There's some years where they wouldn't have had, 6 teams in a 14-team playoff and stuff. So I see why they would want to guarantee bids. I can see why they would want to try to convince the Big 12 and the ACC that, look, if we give you a similar number, then that's a better thing for your conference than what you currently have. But man, I think it's very clear to everyone when you start putting dollars on it, what a gap this creates.
Max, spring football is starting, and that spring transfer portal window is, I'm sure you're just dreading it, because then your life goes away again for 3-4 weeks. But
I'm not dreading it. My wife and my son are dreading it, but I'm not. I mean, it's coming.
But is there anything intriguing coming up in the spring, that you've kind of got your eye on in particular, about maybe some position battles or some schools that are trying to make a move?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few schools that you look at and you're very curious. Are they looking to, make some moves in this spring window? Obviously, you've seen some programs like Ole Miss and Oregon that are making big runs at a playoff and title run here, and so they've added a ton in December, January. Will they be looking to pick up a couple more kind of final pieces here to have a championship caliber team? You've got the quarterback situation at Ohio State, where you've got 5 scholarship guys that are all very talented between, let's see if I can name them all: Will Howard, Devin Brown, Lincoln Kindholt, Julian Sayin, and Aaron Nolan. 2 of those guys are true freshmen. One of them is a redshirt freshman. So how does that room kind of shake out? If Will Howard's the guy, as you'd expect, does that lead a few other guys to feel like maybe they need to make a move? And then there's some of these like Auburn or maybe even Michigan, where you're kind of wondering, okay, do they like what they have at QB, or are they going to be looking for someone? So I think there will be a bunch of those. And with the way things are right now, since we've suspended the repeat transfer rules and stuff, I think you're going to see a lot of tampering in April. As we did last year, and potentially, more big names. I mean, it's easy to forget, like a guy like Keon Coleman went in the portal right when that opened last April. I think we'll see kind of big impact guys pop up and try to make moves to make some more money.
Max, you had a nice piece on Lance Leipold, who just got a new contract there with the Kansas Jayhawks. And for those who haven't checked it out, how Lance Leipold became college football's most fearless program builder. Take us into that article and your thoughts on, obviously, what he's got going on right now at Kansas and what they're hoping he's going to have cooking here in the future as well.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing it up. This is a story that I've started reporting really towards the end of the 2022 season, and have just been spending a lot of time visiting Lance Leipold, visiting Kansas over the past year, and really kind of trying to just get a better sense of how do they do it there. Everyone kind of knows the reputation. They know, he's pulling off a miracle at Kansas. He had a pretty successful run in the MAC at Buffalo. He won a bunch of national titles at Wisconsin Whitewater. But, I think the how of it, the process of what makes him so successful, what makes the culture so successful, it was really fun to dive into that and talk to players and coaches who've been with him at all 3 schools, and talk to coaches who are involved in his rise through the coaching ranks, because this is a guy that took a while to become a head coach. He's someone that has done a pretty incredible job everywhere he's been. And, I think you can't, I think more than 25 interviews for this one. Probably could write a book after all those, but it was hard to find someone who would say a bad word about the guy. I think he's just so impressive as a leader and as a program builder. And, guys, for when you think about the past decade before he got there, Kansas losing his program in FBS and just how pitiful those Big 12 games were year after year. To see them actually compete now in such a quick turnaround is pretty incredible. And if you look at what they've got with Jalen Daniels healthy, with Devin Neal back, with 26 other guys with starting experience, I think there's a real possibility here in this changing conference that Kansas can compete for a Big 12 title, and that's a testament to. No matter who you hire there, I don't think anybody would have expected that by year 4 we're saying that about the Kansas Jayhawks.
He has history as a part-time cop, police academy, group home for delinquent boys. This story, Max, seriously, you've written a lot of good ones, but this one here is phenomenal. If people want to dig into Leipold, share the story about when he was at Nebraska under Solich.
Yeah.
And they go through the firing of Solich, and they hire Bill Callahan, and we know the disastrous length of time that coaching search took. And then what did Peterson say to him?
So Lance Leipold, he was at Nebraska Omaha for many years, and as he was approaching 40, he felt like he started needing to move up a little bit more. So he took a recruiting job in Nebraska, and he was there for the end of the Frank Solich era. He got to really kind of see the demise there and witness just kind of how dysfunctional, a once great program at the highest level can be. As a guy coming from Wisconsin Whitewater, had never really been at that big of a stage of college football. And, certainly he was very soured by his experience at Nebraska at that time. And, he's actually somebody that behind the scenes, that coaching search went 41 days, which nowadays would probably get an AD fired in the middle of it, right? That's just impossible that a coaching search could be running that long nowadays. When we just had a cycle where these things go for 3 days, so he actually had a connection. He worked with Bill Callahan at Wisconsin, actually helped connect Bill Callahan to Nebraska's administration and kind of gauge his interest and help save the search after a bunch of people had turned them down. So yeah, Steve Peterson, the old AD at Nebraska, who's pretty reviled by the fan base now, he pops by Lance's office, and Lance is expecting Steve to thank him for the role he played in finally connecting Bill Callahan to Nebraska and helping make that hire possible. And, Steve asked him to go into Frank Solich's office and go clean the office, go wipe down the boards and dust the office because nobody had been in there in, 40 days or so. And Lance told me that he went to Nebraska's DFO and said he can kiss my ass. And he went home. He went home for the day and basically decided I need to leave this place as soon as possible, and went back to Nebraska Omaha to be their OC.
Yeah, outside of actually detonating a nuke in Lincoln, is there anything worse Steve Peterson could have done to that athletic department? No. Yeah. We did a story on that search a couple of years ago, and unfortunately we're not able to get in touch with him. He's out of the business now, but very for Nebraska fans of a certain age, he's a very memorable figure in the decline of that program here. I wish you could have seen Smokey at Cowboys training camp when Bill Callahan got their offensive line job, and he walked by, and Smokey just shot him a death stare.
Yeah, he dropped by.
Nice guy, but
when I was in Tyler, he dropped by the radio station. It was pretty cool, but man, that was just such a just awful. That it could not have gone
wrong
worse.
guy at the wrong time. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Craig, you mentioned you did a combo story on Mac Brown and what built how they were able to get to Oklahoma, then past Oklahoma and win a national title, and how that was all put together too. You're part of that tandem?
Yeah. Sam Conn and I did a story on Texas Junior days and, back in the day. And, when they kind of looking back on that period when they really had it rolling, especially after they won the national title, where I don't know how much you guys remember this, but back in, the spring, they could bring in a group for, very exclusive invite only junior day and, pick up a dozen commits in one weekend. And it we were kind of just looking back on this time when Texas was really the dominant power in that state in recruiting, and Mac Brown was kind of making all the rules when it came to who he wanted to take. And so, yeah, I talked to a lot of coaches and players from that time. And, look, there's that you look back on it now and it seems like a lot of time has passed since recruiting worked that way. It's very old fashioned in a lot of ways, but I think there's also Texas fans who look at that time and say, that Texas probably should have won more national titles in that span. And that maybe all that the early commitments they took that didn't pan out is the reason why they didn't win more. So I think it's an interesting look back on a time when Texas really kind of changed the game in recruiting with the way Mac Brown was doing junior days.
Max, thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Enjoy the weekend, and good luck as you prep for the hellacious part of transfer portal opening up not that far around the corner. Max Olson, theathletic.com. So part of the story about Lance